I made this, I made that, I inspired another shoemaker to make these. I'm currently coaching a group of 20 other shoemakers on how to make boots, so I should know a thing or two about how boots are made. In the course of my learning and practicing, and of course teaching how boots are made, I've realized that there are two skills that you need, and that's the subject of this video. Those two skills are number one, creating your boot blanks, and number two, springing the vamp. Now, number one, the boot blanks. You wouldn't find the term boot blanks in any of the major textbooks, but that's a term that I use to describe the boot pattern, the boot standard pattern that factors in the heel pitch of the last from which the boot is to be created. Now, I'll explain what I mean. Now, to create your boot blanks, you need the mean form. Of course, some people will work with the lateral side of their last copy. I don't typically do that. I will always work with my mean form, which is an average between the lateral side and the medial side. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm placing the lateral side on top of the medial side last copy, trace heel to heel, tip to tip, and then finding the difference between the two of them. I'll cut along those differential lines, and that will be my mean form. The advantage of using your mean form as against using any of your last copies is that you're factoring in any shortfalls that may appear on one side and compensating for it with the extras that appear on the other side. For detailed discussions and learning of how to create mean forms, I'll put links in description so that you can keep yourself abreast of that part of our discussion. But this video is not on the subject of mean forms, but rather boot blanks. So I will finish off my mean form by drawing in my quarter line, which runs from the counterpoint to the middle of the vamp line. Now I'll find the heel pitch of the last from where I'm creating the boot. Place that last on the tip of the last on a pencil and then measure how far it lifts off of the ground. For this last, I think it came to about 8.5 cm or thereabouts. So I'll measure in that heel pitch on the vertical line of a right angle that I just drew. Then I'll place the heel of the mean form on that heel pitch point and the ball of the mean form on the horizontal line and trace in my mean form. Now this is the boot blank outline. To finish it off, I'll draw a line from the heel to the ball and then draw another line parallel to that line that I just drew from the instep. From the instep, draw it. Then I will draw a line from the heel to the instep and measure that line that runs from the heel to the instep. On this last, it came to 18 cm. Half of that distance, I will mark it in on the parallel line the line that runs parallel from the heel to the ball. If I measure it in on that line and then draw a right angle from the horizontal baseline through that point that I just drew on the parallel line, it will give me the center of gravity of this boot from where I can measure any height that I want to ascribe to this boot. Now I want the boot that I'm working on to be 16 cm. So as you can see from the feather edge, I have marked in 16. Then if I draw a right angle from the vertical line, I will have the top line of my boot. So this that you see here is my boot blank. So what is the importance of this boot blank? Number one, it factors in the heel pitch of your last, meaning that when your boot stands upright, your top line will be at 90 degrees to the ground level, meaning that your boot won't have the appearance of being slanted to one side or being like a sopido shoe, being like a shoe that Charlie Chaplin, a boot that that was made for Charlie Chaplin. So basically, that's the importance of creating boot blanks. So I've created a boot blank out of my main form. I'm cutting it out right now. And with that, I will do a quick creation of the basic Chelsea boot pattern. To do that, I'll simply divide my top line into two, draw a vertical line from that middle point of the top line, and that will mark the reference from where I will generate the width and length of my elastic pattern. So I want the elastic on this boot to be, let's say, 5 cm, so 2.5 on one side, 2.5 on the back side. Then if I draw a right angle from each of those points, I have my 5 cm width elastic for this boot. Now I want the height of the elastic to be about 9 cm, so I mark in 9 cm and then draw the base of the elastic. All that remains will be to, give the elastic some aesthetics, add curves at the base like so, and then voila, my Chelsea boot pattern is done and dusted. Let me reduce the elastic height so that it doesn't start from the top line, and then add a few curves on top of there and on top of there. So my basic Chelsea boot pattern is done. We cut out the different pattern pieces. So that is the pattern piece for the vamp that I'm cutting out right now. So cut that pattern piece for the vamp. And then I'll go ahead and cut the pattern piece for the elastic as well. And then finally, the pattern piece for the quarter of this Chelsea boot. So ladies and gentlemen, your basic simple Chelsea boot is right here. So that marks the end of part one. We have created our boot blank and made our Chelsea boot pattern out of it. Now let's go to the part that is also troublesome for many people, which is springing the vamp. And that's part two. Now, what many people do is they just take the vamp of their Chelsea boot and simply duplicate it and hope that by some form of magic, they will be able to crimp it. Now, when you just duplicate the vamp of your Chelsea boot, even small common sense should let you know that this extra piece of leather in the middle will make it absolutely impossible to crimp. To be able to take away that void, to be able to take away that extra piece of leather, you do something called springing. And that's what I'm about to show you how to do. To spring, you must take note of 3 different lines that appear on the vamp of your boot, any boot. The first line is this one that runs from the shin region downwards. Then this one that's around the middle, just like parallel to your instep. And then the third one is the one that runs from around the tip area towards the counter. Then, of course, because it's a Chelsea boot that has elastic, there's also the curve that is made by the elastic, but we'll deal with that presently. So this is the curve that the elastic made. So you see there's a line running from the back there forward, and then that's the middle of that curve. So let's mark a few points. Let's mark here as point 1, the in between there as point 2, And then if we draw a right angle from point 1 towards the feather edge, the place where that right angle touches the feather edge, before we name that point, let's mark the end of line 2 as point 3, the curve of the elastic as point 5, and then the point where the right angle touched the feather edge as point 4. So, so take good note of the placement of these points. Now let's go into springing. Now to spring, we'll put point 1 and point 2 on the horizontal line. Point 1 and point 2 as mark on the horizontal line. And then we'll draw. So point 1 will remain our pivot. The key thing you must notice about springing is that we only have two pivots, point 1 and point 5. So with point 1 and 2 on the horizontal line, we drew from point 5 downwards. Now using point 1 as our pivot, we'll bring the tip to our horizontal line. And then we'll draw a curve from that tip to point 4, which is the end of the right angle that we drew in earlier on. Remember, point 1 remains our pivot, and we take point 2 back to where we started, which is laying it on the horizontal line. The next thing is to move the point 3 to the horizontal line. Once we move it, we now draw from point 4 to where the first set of lines that we drew in at the feather edge started. So using point 1 as our pivot, we bring point 2 back to the horizontal line, which is exactly where we started. Now we will start to focus on the curve of the elastic. Now, if we mark 1 cm above point 2 and using point 5 as our pivot, we'll bring that 1 cm mark to the horizontal line. Then we'll draw a right angle from that point that we marked above point 2 towards the elastic line. The point where it touches the elastic line, we'll draw our curve to meet that point. That point becomes our next pivot line, but we don't pivot until we draw another 1 cm line above the first mark that we made before. Then we draw a right angle, meet it, and that becomes our next pivot line. And then using that point again, we pivot to a point 1 cm above the earlier one that we did until the entirety of the upper part of the boot lies on our horizontal line. Now we can finish curving the entire thing in. Now if we duplicate what we have, you'll find that that void which you had earlier on is not there anymore. This evil void that will never allow you crimp this boot has been totally eliminated by the simple fact of springing of your vamp. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the two important skills that you need to learn. I recommend that you watch this video over and over again and familiarize yourself with it. Until next time, God bless you and Merry Christmas.